Hi guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people. Their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Martijn. Hello.
Hello there, nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Grateful for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, so Martijn, what's your sort of 1 minute intro? What do you do?
What do I do? I ask myself that every day. At work I run the cybersecurity team.
Wow!
Here at KPMG. I've been doing this for a little bit over a year now, taking over from Gordon Archibald.
Yeah,
and,
big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill, so that's my business role, and outside that I'm mostly a dad to my kids, and obviously try to be a good husband to my wife. But,
yeah. Oh, that's beautiful, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so Martijn, you have a very unique name, so where does it come from and does it mean anything?
Yes, it is silly Dutch for Martin.
Martin.
Yes, it is silly Dutch for Martin. The I and the J is actually a character in Dutch, so it's not on a keyboard or anything like that. So the closest it comes is the I and the J. That's why we type it that way. But there's a lot of Dutchies that are called Martijn.
Yeah.
Funny J's in there everywhere. So yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is your name generally mispronounced? Have you heard any funny pronunciations?
Only in Australia. Only in
What
Australia.
do you do?
In the UK, it's just Martin, but over here it's a combination of Martijn, Martijan, which is probably the worst.
Martijan.
Marty, which is a no-go area. It's Martijn, but I respond to anything between Martijan and Martijn. To be frank, I've learned how to cope with it. Australians have got no respect for people's names, which is totally cool. Which is totally cool.
Yeah, awesome. So Martijn, we want to know, what kind of kid were you like growing up?
What kind of kid was I? Probably one of those annoying kids that was just asking why the whole time.
Very curious kid.
Yeah, curious kids, a bit of a nerd. Not that good at sports, but always outdoor, always active.
Yeah.
If I was growing up today, I was probably one of those kids that was diagnosed with
ADHD.
Yeah, probably. Back then it wasn't a thing, so. One of those kids that just was always out and about, curious, mostly getting into, not massively into trouble, but just by being curious, doing things, venturing out, trying things, that was sort of my kid, when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did the teachers like you very much? I mean, you were like a smart kid, I guess, because you're curious, but...
Yeah, I was always trying to sort of sit in the back, like everybody. No one wanted to be the front of the teacher, right? So I was one of those kids that always tried to make a rush for the back rows, and...
the cool kid.
No, I wasn't that cool, actually. No, I wasn't that cool. I was a nerd, but I was sort of like that sort of... You had the sporty kids that were always outgoing and sort of would dictate what was happening in the classroom. I was sort of the next tier down, but I was sort of the nerd, but good at understanding what was going on. Still trying to sort of be one of the cool kids, but never really was, let's be frank. So,
I mean, now you're pretty cool, right?
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, so I wanted to know, what were you nerding out about when you were younger? Was it books? Was it, I don't know?
Yeah, it was probably a bit, I was reading a lot as a kid, but I think probably I was always playing with like little kids. I had lots of technical Lego kits, and then I got into sort of electronics kind of stuff. And then I still remember when we got our first Commodore 64. That's basically a computer, a personal computer. Then my parents got us and started to learn to code in BASIC, and that was sort of me, like hanging out with other friends who had one of those things at home. We were always copying games and trying to break things. Thankfully, that thing wasn't connected to the internet or anything like that, because it would have been probably quite risky at the time if that was the case, because I would have absolutely soaked it up, those sort of things. But we had to learn from each other how these things work, trial and error. There was nothing you could go to look up. You can get a book from the library maybe. So that was it. Meanwhile, I was trying to do things like football, that is soccer for us, but I wasn't that good at that. So although I was sort of outside doing a lot of that stuff, I spent a lot of time with friends sort of nerding out on our Commodore 64s.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what do you think about the computers that was more interesting than playing sports? What was that kind of attraction, would you say?
Look, I love the games, to be honest. I just played games a lot, and I never paid for any of those, because we had this little posse going on, of course. That was copying cassette tapes, all these games of each other. I don't even know where that came from, but one of the other kids in the neighborhood always had the latest and greatest, and then we just had a little copying evening, and then everybody went home and did those sort of things. I did like the idea of the programming piece, but I wasn't that good at it. I was okay at it, but not massively good. Sort of getting these things to do what it did, but at the time it was quite local, right? You got something on a screen that did something, rather than it would communicate with another thing somewhere else. I mean, what we have now with the whole Internet of Things and all these things talking to each other, like you could only dream of that back then. Like I just had a little thing there with a keyboard, and you could say print Martijn, and then go back to 10, and then it would just print your name, and it just keep going on. And I thought it was amazing. But like I said, it was probably a good thing we didn't have the internet back then. For me.
That's true. That's cool. And did you have siblings growing up?
Yeah, one little brother. One little brother who's much bigger than I am, actually. But
bigger than you?
Yes.
As in
taller and heavier, more muscly, and so on. But yeah, he's always going to be my little brother, obviously.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, who was almost the opposite of me. So much more relaxed, much more easygoing.
Wow, so you weren't relaxed and easygoing, huh?
No, I was this ADHD kid that was just always wanted to try new stuff and go out and about. And he was much more calm, I think. Probably good for my parents to have a second child.
A bit of like a
calm.
yin and yang.
Yes, probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
And so when you were sort of thinking about the future when you were a kid, what was kind of floating through your mind, if anything?
Just what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always, my parents, because I grew up in Europe, in the Netherlands, and my parents always took us to Scandinavia, and that involved a massive ferry from Denmark to Sweden. And that thing was amazing. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. A big floating ship. So I always wanted to be a captain on one of those big ships as a small child. A lot of my friends want to become firemen, astronauts, and so on. Like I wanted to be a captain on a ship like that. And then, that was sort of my image of where I wanted to get to. This was like when you were like 7, 8, 9 years old, and then it was probably a void where I had no idea what I was going to do. Probably just nerding out with computers and playing some football. And then when you have to go to uni in the Netherlands, you have to sort of decide what you're going to do, and you're pretty much now locked in for the next 6 to 8 years, right? So it's quite an important choice that you have to make. So I wanted to study what we call medicine, so basically to become a doctor. So that was my thing. That was the thing, right? And become some kind of surgeon or something like that. In the system in the Netherlands, actually, because all these universities are paid by government, which is really good. So you don't have to get a massive debt and so on. It's all subsidized, which is great. But because those courses were oversubscribed, you have to go into a draw. And although my grades were very good, I got a really terrible draw. So I was sort of, my draw was I think they had about 3,000 spots at the time, and I was number 12,055 or something like that.
Not even close.
Not even close. So I had to make a random decision to do something else for a year. So what do I do? And like, all right, I like computers. But I'm not hardcore programming. So then this new thing just started at one of the universities in the Netherlands called information management. And I'm like, all right, that sounds like it's a bit between hardcore techie stuff and what business people do. One of my good friends went there from my school. So I thought, like, you know what, I'll just do that. Sounds like a nice year to sort of, as a gap year almost. And then next year I'll apply again to that medicine course. So I did it for a year. Started to actually quite enjoy it. And then the draw came again, and then suddenly I got in. So I had to make a choice. So like, what do I do? Do I just pivot away from information management and start again, I guess, lose a year in a way, but start sort of studying medicine and become my doctor and so on. But at that time, I figured that I'm going to stick with information management. And I think my parents... Well, I think my parents also said, like, I don't think you're going to make a good doctor. So
what?
Too impulsive, probably.
Distracted?
Too distracted. You won't have a steady hand. Those sort of comments. So like, fair enough. And so I decided to stick with information management. But it's really funny how these things sort of get decided where you end up in life. And like, we're sitting here now in Australia, growing up in the Netherlands. Had I decided that weekend to go the other way,
Yeah.
we would never been on this side of the planet. Probably, I would have had a total different career. So yeah, it was so it was really funny how these things get decided on a flip of a coin.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
It's so close. It's just
Yep.
like one word difference. So,
Yes. Yeah.
If you said doctor.
Doctor. Yeah. No, I think my parents were right. I would have made a terrible doctor. I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aw. And so when you were younger, did your parents have any vision for you? Like, my boy is going to be a X?
No, not really. They
Okay.
No, not really. They like I got in the Netherlands. You grow up. It's very Montessori in a way. My youth, like whatever you want to be. It's like my parents kept me completely
Free range.
Like you do whatever you want to do. So I was never really encouraged to do sports or computers or so on. They opened up. They gave me all the opportunities to do whatever I wanted, but I sort of plotted my own way through that, which was very much their intent. And and it's probably that as part of our society probably over there that it's very much you will find your own way in a way. Everyone's sort of free. We're a very liberal country. So that fitted that narrative in a way. So so I never got any pressure from my parents to go left or right. Just the frowning eyebrows when I said I wanted to do the medicine thing and become a doctor. They're like, you sure about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of curious. So how did doctors sort of pop into your mind? Because you've been tinkling with technology, so I thought naturally, But you said it was too technical.
It wasn't too technical, but I thought I was going to get bored. I thought I was going to get bored with technology. Because imagine this, like none of these PCs back then were really connected. At some point I got a modem and you could go to these things called bulletin boards, which suddenly made it really exciting. But it still felt quite boring to be in front of a screen all day. And I think the whole doctor thing, and again, I saw myself doing massively complex operations, right? Not dealing with ingrown toenails or anything like that. And I thought that the differentiation, all the different cases you would have would really appeal to me at that time. That's why I picked it. And but you could have said the same thing about engineering or so on, but I wasn't that interested in that at that time. So it was kind of one of those flukes, and I don't know. I haven't given it much thought actually in the last decade or so. Anyway, so
sorry to bring it back up.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess if you did go down the medicine route, you probably would have been a surgeon, huh?
Well,
that would have been the most
probably
exciting.
Yeah, but probably in court by now because I did something stupid and something bad happened and disbarred from whatever it's called. So, probably.
I mean, you could have saved a lot of people's lives.
Maybe.
Let's think positive.
Maybe.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. And then let's talk about your next piece of education. So what did you do after doing the information management?
I pretty much went to travel. So I traveled around the world with some friends.
Gap year, or?
Yeah, gap year. So I took a year off because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Yeah. So I did information management, which sort of there was lots of routes. So there would be a route into sort of hardcore IT programming. There would be a route more into sort of MBAs, and there would be a route into all these traineeships at the big companies, the Shells, the P&Gs, the Unilevers. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I took a gap year to travel around. So I bought a ticket around the world, and went through. Actually, we did most of it by train, and with me and some friends, we went through Russia, Mongolia, China by train, and then got to Indonesia and Hong Kong, and eventually we got to Australia. And I still remember walking around in Sydney and sitting in Darling Harbour after a month or two in Russia, which was quite grim at the time. And like, this is a really nice place.
Yeah.
And we're having a little beer, and there was some music playing in the background. And I thought, this is such a nice culture. I want to move to Australia one day. And so we were sitting there, and I was just looking around, what kind of logos are here? Because I knew I had to find a job somewhere. Yeah. And I was sitting in front of the KPMG building. And I'm like, hey, I know that brand. So that's KPMG. And then there was sort of some other companies who had big logos there, ANZ, CBA. Never heard of those companies in my life. So, but KPMG stuck with me. So I started looking into it. What do they do? Okay, accounting, consulting. Oh, IT auditing. What's that? Like, hey, that's actually quite in my sweet spot. So when I came back from my travels, I applied for an internship at KPMG in Amsterdam in this team called IT auditing, which was the precursor to tech risk.
Yeah.
And got accepted, so I got in somehow, and and that's how was the start of my career at KPMG. So I was a little intern doing a lot of intern work. So back then we were copying a lot of reports, so I had to put them in binders and all that sort of stuff.
The fun stuff.
Get coffee for all the managers.
Yeah.
So that was sort of most of my day, and eventually you got into to jobs and work, and I was sitting in this room with a bunch of other graduates, and I was sort of the youngest in there, which was a really cool. It was a really cool team at the time in Amsterdam. And next door was the pen test team. So there was the first iteration of a penetration testing team that we've had, I think, globally. Back then it was the Dutch, the Finns, and the US had teams, and that was it. And they were doing really cool stuff. And so I started really get close to what they were doing. So and that's how I got into security at the end of the day. So by spending a lot of time with them, asking a lot of stupid questions, doing a lot of learning on the side. Most of my first job were very much hardcore in crypto, and that was before Bitcoin was a thing. This was very much cryptography before. A lot of things around public key infrastructures and big implementations for governments and so on. So that became my thing, and that became then eventually this thing called identity and access management.
Wow.
Anyway, that's sort of became my specialty over time. So pen testing, cryptography, identity and access management, and that then allowed me to travel the world and come to Australia for KPMG after 5 years.
Wow.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but that's
but that's amazing, and it's really funny to just connect and see the whole bigger picture.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's funny how this whole thing hangs together, like little moments decide the entire career in your life.
Up at that
I was saying, like, hey, KPMG, what's that? And then you make a decision like, I want to live in Australia one day. But I knew that if I'd walked into that office at the time with my backpack and probably my smelly clothes, I wouldn't have gotten a job, right? So I figured that I need to get some experience locally in the Netherlands first, in Amsterdam. And that's why I picked them, because I knew they were in Amsterdam and they had an office in Sydney. And it's little moments like that eventually contribute to sitting here in this room doing a podcast with you.
Yeah, that is so funny. But I want to backtrack a bit. So tell me about the year of traveling. So was it your friends who also did the same degree as you? And they're like, let's do it. How did you guys decide, let's do a gap year? Because a lot of people, they might just, I'll just pick something for now.
Yeah, I think it has to do again with the system we have over there, right? So all of us went through 5 years of university.
Wow,
so it's 5 years over there. You have to write a thesis. It's basically you have to. It's a 4-year degree. We all took a bit longer, which is fine because the government is paying for this at the time. So we had, when we finished, none of us really had any idea what we wanted to do. We were all kind of nerds, and we sort of felt like we wanted to explore the world a little bit. But the big thing, I think, was really because we had no debt. We had no study debts. We could, and most of us, we were working on the side at the time as well, so we all had a little bit of an income. Over here you work at Coles or Woolies, over there you got the same equivalent. I was working in a potato factory locally in my village, but it was making a pretty good income from that on the weekends. So I had savings, no debt, so that's why we all took that year off. So, and it sort of makes you feel like, okay, I got so privileged by growing up in the Netherlands because of that. And we had an opportunity, and so we took it.
That's awesome. And how did that 1 year change you?
Quite a bit, because suddenly the four of you are suddenly on your own. And I still remember that moment when we stepped into the train in St. Petersburg to Mongolia, and we knew we were going to be on this train for a week, and no one spoke any English at the time.
You guys are brave.
Yeah, there was no mobile phones, for example. It was before Apple was a thing. So there was no internet. We had nothing. We had a Lonely Planet guide in our backpack, and that was it. So all our information come from that, and it was just the four of us working things through. yeah, I mean, there's some crazy stories that happened. But yeah, we're on this train, and we didn't realize, but that train was basically a driving supermarket for the Russians. So all these people from Mongolia were sitting on the platform with massive bags, and we're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And there was this guy that had a compartment next to us, and he had his entire cabin was full of Pringle cartons. So we had all these Pringle tubes sitting in there. I'm like, what is he going to do with that?
Yeah.
And then every 3 hours the train stops, and there would be in the middle of nowhere, but it would be 200-300 people on the platform, and like, what's going on here? And it turns out that everybody on our train was a merchant, and they were basically buying stuff in Moscow and then or St. Petersburg, and they were selling it to the locals. So our Pringle guy next door was selling all his Pringles for probably a massive amount of profit to the Russians on the way. And that was his whole life. So he would go up and down with a train every now and then. And we just hung out with them for a week. And yeah, you get to know each other better. You don't have that much language in common, but you can still communicate. And
eat some Pringles.
Yeah, well, obviously we bought his Pringles, so we were probably his best customer, to be honest, on that week.
Cute.
But yeah, but it's little things like that really. I think it taught us an awful lot, right? We were all coming from this very safe environment in the Netherlands, where suddenly you go like, all right, this is so different cultures, different people, real poverty, that you suddenly sort of realize like, oh, crikey, we're so bloody privileged as a bunch of white guys, basically, exploring the world that way. So I think it did shape us all quite a bit. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you told your parents about this idea, you and your 3 blokes going to travel the world. What was the kind of the response? And
frowning eyebrows again. It's like, really? But then we were all probably, what were we? 19, 20?
Yeah.
So we were maybe actually a bit older. Actually, we're probably in 22, 23, maybe even. So we're clearly mature by definition. So our parents were like, you know what?
Hands off.
I think my parents were happy that the 4 of us did it, so rather than me by myself through those countries, and I'm pretty sure they had a sigh of relief when we got to Australia, when it became a bit more civilized. Back then we had to use payphones and so on, right? It was hard to communicate. They wouldn't hear from us for a week. There were no selfies on the train or anything. We couldn't do any of that stuff because we had this big old camera with us that we were just protecting with our life, because you were too afraid that it was either going to get stolen or damaged or you lost it. But all the photos would be on that thing. Yeah. So no iCloud back then.
Yeah, that sucks.
Nope. Yep.
Wow, what an adventure. Yeah, and then back to your career. So you come back and you're like, you want to work for KPMG.
Yep.
You get the job, and was it kind of love at first sight when you started working?
It wasn't love at first sight.
Because when I heard you had to do the copies and do the binding, and for someone who is very curious, like
it was boring, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty boring, and especially after a year of traveling. So there were some adjustments to be made, but I think it was also probably because the first 2-3 months I was just doing internal stuff. I wasn't on a project. And I think the moment I got into an engagement, everything changed. So suddenly you're out there, you're with all these other consultants who are all super smart, who know what they're doing. So I felt like a sponge. So I was like, okay, this is really cool. People from the client, and so that changed things dramatically. With the first months, I was like, what have I done? Should become a doctor. Too late at that point, but
Yeah, that's awesome. And then tell me about working for ICTU as part of KPMG.
So that was one of my first big jobs. I was seconded out to. It's called ICTU. It's basically the central agency for the Dutch government. Does all their IT projects. So I got seconded into a project that was basically building their authentication gateway and their national public key infrastructure. So it was all about, and this was early 2000s, but it was all about how will citizens authenticate themselves through the government over the internet. So it was very much around setting that infrastructure back up. At that time, we all thought we're going to have digital passports. So you're going to have like a little smart card or something like that in your wallet that you can then dock into a reader at your desk and then you can say, hey, I'm Martijn, and you can do your business with the government. So yeah, I spent a few years on that project. It was amazing in a way, and it's funny how these things go, because actually we built something completely different that used usernames, passwords, and became SMS. And so we never got to the point where we had physical cards. But again, that project, it was one of those things that sort of helped me get to Australia, because I'd done that in the Netherlands for 3 years at that particular client. Australia, there was a thing called the access card that just got underway. And when I sent my CV to KPMG Australia, I got to Matt O'Keefe's desk actually. That experience was probably helped me get a job here. And when I got here, I immediately got put onto the access card projects.
That's perfect.
Yeah, because I'd done all that stuff in the Netherlands by coincidence. So I was sort of the Dutchie that was on the project. And like, tell everybody how you did this over there. And I'm like, oh, we did this, and this. And so it was a really cool project actually. But then, so I was on that for about a year, but then the change in government came. Kevin Rudd became Prime Minister, so that project was then killed off. And then, all right, that was it. That was my Canberra career cut short in a way. But at the time, I was firmly settled here in, I ended up in Melbourne by coincidence again.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I wanted to go to Sydney because that's where I sat on Darling Harbour and I looked up. And somehow my CV ended up at Matt O'Keefe's desk. And Matt at the time said that Sydney was full, so it had to be Melbourne. And I'm like, okay, well, fine, it must be the same, I thought naively. So it's like, fine, I just want to get to Australia, I'll go to Melbourne. And I still remember arriving in Melbourne in the rain in winter, and I'm like, no opera house, no pretty beaches. I'm like, this is not so sure. This is different. I'm not so sure about this. And I still I got onto this access card project with a partner from Sydney called Peter McNally. And first time I met Peter, he asked me, "Why did you choose Melbourne? Why did you not come to Sydney?" I'm like, well, Melbourne was full. Who told you that? I'm like, Matt told me that. It's like, that's not true. Anyway, so that's how I ended up in Melbourne. So again, by this little coincidence that my CV ended up at Matt's desk, I ended up in Melbourne. So yeah,
that's a bit crazy.
Yep.
And I wanted to know that. So as soon as you came to started working for KPMG, were you already pushing for the Australia secondment? Because it took you like 5 years, or was that sort of something you haphazardly thought about?
It was on my mind always, but
I can't believe how you love Australia that much. Like,
how? Well, I think it made a big impression on me. Let's put it this way. So I knew I needed to be 3, 4, 5 years. I know I needed a skill set before coming to Australia. So what can I do that is sort of unique and transferable to another country? So hence I rolled into IT auditing, which became tech risk, which became info security, really. And because I did all this crypto stuff and pen testing and so on, I was very techy, especially in the KPMG world at the time. So that's why I did what I did. So I knew it would become a transferable skill, so I could actually work all over the planet for KPMG. So that was sort of the background in it. And around in my third, fourth year, I started to reach out through the network to see if there's any positions, and it still takes between 6 and 12 months. So if you ever decide to go on a secondment, that's probably the time it will still take to get things, all the paperwork arranged and so on. In the end, actually, I didn't even go on a secondment because the Netherlands at the time didn't want to participate in that scheme. So I ended up resigning and just taking the job directly with KPMG Australia. So we cut the cords with KPMG Netherlands, and in a way it was probably for the best. Otherwise, I had to be back after 2 years, and now I spent 5 years in Australia and met my wife here, who still works for the firm as well.
Wow.
So
the power couple, huh?
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure about that, but again, it's like, had I not come to Melbourne in KPMG, I would never met her. We would never gone to London and come back here. So again, it's these little things in life that have a massive change on your life.
That's beautiful. Also want to know about the career break from KPMG. So at that time you made it to director at KPMG.
This was in London. So I made it to director in KPMG, and I kind of like so we were probably 4 or 5 years in London at that point, and London was absolutely KPMG on steroids. Massive programs of work we were doing with the likes of UBS and some of the big banks, but after 5 years I kind of really felt empty, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and at the time there was a lot of uncertainty in the team as well, like where is this going to go around information security and cyber in KPMG. So I decided to do a little break, and it was actually one of those Friday nights where I came home going, "Ugh," and my wife was asking the questions like, "What's going on? Do you still want to be partner at KPMG?" And I said something along the lines, "Yeah, of course. I wouldn't know what else to do."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, maybe just take a break, do something else for a little bit before you then go for that." And then by coincidence that weekend, an old friend of mine called me up from Australia and said, "Hey, guess what? I've resigned from National Australia Bank, and we're starting this new company called Locals, and it's all about micro-location technology. We're going to build a platform. We're going to do some really cool stuff to make your phone understand where it is in the physical world. Do you want to join us?" And I said, "Well, that sounds really cool, actually, because I'm actually looking for something else for a bit, but I don't want to come to Australia yet." We were happy in London at the time.
Oh.
So he said, "Well, that's fine, because we also probably want to set this up in Europe, and why don't you then become the director for Europe for Locals?" And so actually, that sounds really, really cool. So I decided, actually, again, one of those Sunday mornings where after a call like this actually would be good. I need a break from the firm. I need to do something else. This has come on my path, so I'm gonna do this. So I took a career break for 2 years from KPMG, who were very pragmatic. They said, "Yep, fine, go do it, and call us when you want to come back. We'll keep your slots." I was about to go into the partner development program at that point, but they said, "No, we'll save the slots for you. Go do your thing." And so I spent 2 years riding around on a fixed gear bike in London in my hoodie, pitching this technology to all these big brands over there, and we got a lot of traction actually with the platform. We did some really cool stuff, and we brought to Series A funding, so that means you got a bunch of investors that poured a number of millions into the company. But at that time, we also just got a baby at home. So first child was born. Lisa, my wife, was on her mat leave, and I think it was one of those days where she said something along the lines, "Oh, I'm not sure if I want to go back to work yet."
Yeah.
And we bought a house in London, so I sped up my coffee and I'm like, "Well, I'm on this graduate salary at the moment here in London in this startup, having the time of my life, but there's no way we're going to afford the mortgage that we have." And it coincided with 2 years away from KPMG. So I said, "Look, well, then in that case, I need to go back to KPMG." So I gave KPMG a call and said, "Hey, I'm ready to come back." And they said, "Yeah, that's fine, come back." And I was lucky they had a partner slot available, so I went for that and got it. And because Locals was really cool, but at that point it was Series A, so we got a lot of new people come in. It was all funded, so we were moving from this really cool startup phase to a slightly more better governed model.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is starting to feel like KPMG
again,
minus the
as
pay.
well.
So that's why I went back. But it was a great time because we were doing hardcore techie stuff. It was my first flavor of DevOps that I'd never seen before. Everything was built in the cloud. We had this modern tech stack, all microservices. So I was working with these 25-year-olds that taught me all these skills, and I'm quite a hands-on guy. So it was sort of like that 2 years brought me from old school client server land with data centers into the cloud. So those 2 years were massively beneficial for my tech skills, and hence back to KPMG eventually. So but Local still exists if you want to know. It's still there.
That's awesome.
We spun off another company called Medipass. It was bought by Tyro 2 years ago. So it's still a thing. So it's been fun to be part of something like that for a few years.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, and something so different.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. We don't have too much time left, and I have
Sure.
a bunch of questions that I
Yeah.
want to ask you. So maybe kind of like a rapid fire, if you will. So how would you sort of describe your leadership style / leadership philosophy?
I like to be so right. I like to manage. I don't. Okay, this is a really tough quality, right? I like to give a framework for people to operate in and excel in, rather than telling people exactly what to do. So I firmly believe that we hire really smart people, and my job is to give them the opportunity and get out of the way.
Yeah.
So my style is a bit hands off when it comes to everything, because I trust everybody to do the right thing. But as soon as I work with people on a job, I get very hands-on. I'm probably part of the team, and I'm actually creating stuff as well. So I'm not someone. I need to understand the technology. I need to understand what we're doing. And every job I sign off as a partner, I ask myself the question, like, if something goes wrong and I have to deliver this all by myself, can I do that?
Oh.
And if the answer is no, then I probably won't sign it. So I always do jobs where I feel like, I know how to get through all this myself, without relying necessarily on really unique skills that I don't have. So I always want to understand really what I'm doing. So still that nerd, I guess, at the end of the day. But in terms of leading the team, my philosophy is really, hire the best and the brightest and get out of the way.
Oh,
Yep.
wow. Does it also sort of remind you how your parents raised you? Very free range
Probably.
kind of guy.
Yeah, probably. Never thought about that. But yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's
probably.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And what do you think is your superpower? What makes you successful? No need to be humble.
I don't know. I think I'm curious. I'm really curious, and therefore I really want to know what's going on, and I apply that to my work as well. So therefore I never end up doing a pitch that like I said, I can't deliver myself. So therefore, I sort of have a bit more assurance for myself that I can do this. So maybe that's it. Being intellectually very curious and then being able to deliver it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
And I'm surprised your curiosity hasn't been like whacked out of you as you've gotten older, right? A lot of people, their curiosity sort of, kind of
Drops.
Yeah, but you have like this childlike excitement and curiosity that I respect so much. How does one maintain it? Or is it just your personality?
maybe it is sort of. I think it's sort of how I was always as a kid. So it comes natural to me. But I like to work things out. I want to know how things work. Really, it's that nerd in yourself. And if I ever stop asking questions and check out, I feel it's time to do something else. If I get bored with something. But this is why what we do is so cool, right? Because we're working with tech. We're working with or against criminal minds that continuously move the dial, so you have to sort of move the dial with it. You can't go still, and I think it just suits my personality. I like to sort of keep moving.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you also gave me some advice last year, which was don't do something you don't hate. Do something you don't hate. Sorry. Can you explain that a bit more?
So when people, I don't believe in the follow your dreams, right?
Yeah.
Because people who tell you that are already rich.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to do the grind. Like most people have to do a grind to get good at something.
Yeah.
So that means you have to spend a few thousand hours doing something to become good at it. And that is a grind. So if you're going to do that, you find something that you don't hate. If you don't...
Setting the really low bar, huh?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. But work is always going to be work. It will always be a grind. That's what it's called, work. Rather than a hobby, and but to become successful in it, you have to sort of spend the time and improve yourself. Unless you're sort of Michael Jordan or Cristiano Ronaldo and extremely skilled at something, it's best to assume that you're not, and therefore. You want to find something you're going to spend 1,000 hours in. Make sure it's something you don't hate.
Yeah, that's awesome, cool. And also tell me about the reinventing yourself every 4 years.
Yeah, so that's sort of like I don't do it on purpose, but it sort of comes in a way. Like my entire career is sort of 4 or 5 year blocks. So it ends up being.
When you get bored?
Yeah, I think so. That feels like almost like a natural rhythm to me. So you do something for 4 years, and then you start thinking about the next thing, which then takes a year before it materializes. So you end up 5 years, you end up doing something else. So 5 years in KPMG Netherlands. Well, sorry, 5 years studying for information management. Gap year, travel, 5 years KPMG Netherlands, 5 years KPMG Australia, 5 years KPMG London, 2-year career break, 5 years partner in London. Going to my second year now, so do the math. But yeah, so I think it's a natural, almost like a rhythm that I have.
That's funny. That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel it goes stale otherwise. So
yeah, that's cool. And also, who are your personal role models, if you have any? / who are the people that have had the biggest influence on your life?
This is such a cliche, but it's probably my parents who basically said, find out what you want to do. If you want to try to become a professional footballer, go for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to succeed. But I work myself. I'm not going to succeed in that stuff. But yeah, it's probably that upbringing in a way. But then at the same time, I think you take as you go through your career, you take little pieces of lots of people. So I don't think there's one ideal role model. Everybody's got their flaws. But if you can sort of see little things in other people every day, then you sort of copy some of those and you take those ones on.
Just copy the best, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but things change, right? So the best role models from 10 years ago would be actually
the best parts.
Yeah, the best part. But even take Steve Jobs, right? If he was in charge right now, he probably would in a class suit action by now.
Yeah.
Right? So look at Elon Musk, for example. Great visionary, great executioner in terms of all his companies, but a bit random at times. So I think no one's perfect, and you have to take the little pieces of lots of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. The deep question you've been avoiding: the meaning of life, Martijn.
The meaning of life. I think it's a tough one, right? I think it changes for yourself over time as well. So I think when you're really young, you just want to have fun. You want to get on, and then at some point you start becoming responsible. You want to settle down, and then you want to have kids, and then when you have kids, you want to look after them, and you want the best for them. And I think I'm not a massively spiritual guy at all. I'm too rational. Protestant upbringing in the Netherlands, which was very liberal. It's very much everybody make sure you can follow your dreams and making sure everyone has the opportunity to excel. I think for now, at the moment, I would say it's looking after my kids, make sure that they're all right. And I look at them, and they're 7 and 4, and in this world of technology powered by AI and all of this stuff, and I go like, what are you gonna do when you grow up? I've got no idea, right? And whereas my parents probably had a better idea what I was probably gonna do when I grow up, because the jobs were similar. In a way, yes, there were computers and so on, but it's gone so quickly right now. It's becoming the cycle has become a lot shorter, and so it's kind of like, in that case, I just need to make sure that they've got they feel enabled to do whatever they want to do, and I give them the best sort of education in the way that I can, and make them understand the world, and they can make their own choice. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do differently about your life, if anything?
If I won the lottery, so I love to say that I'll still be here, but I won't.
Yeah.
I won't.
Bye-bye.
How much I love you guys.
Yeah.
You're awesome. No, I probably set up my bicycle shop.
Yeah.
Somewhere in outside suburbia, and get young people to cycle. So I think that would probably be my mission in life. I love to say it's something more philanthropic, but no, I think something like that.
Yeah. Do you reckon you'd get bored though?
Probably, but then you got 5 years and then you do something else.
Yeah,
so it depends on how much lottery I win. Infinite. Okay. Yeah. You have to do something else then at some point.
Sounds good. And the final question is, what is an ideal day in the life for you? It can be work related, it can be non-work related. Up to you.
I think the ideal day in the life is spending a bit of time with the family. Doing some personal exercise, so being outside and enjoying, and also having some meaningful conversations with people, helping people, and stimulate my brain with some complex problems. That's probably the best day. I love to say it's sitting on the couch and watching some television, but that's probably not it. No.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it was so much fun chatting to you, Martijn, and I loved hearing your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on here. Are you going to do one about yourself one day?
No, thank you.
No? All right. Well, if you are, then happy to interview you and give you the same questions. So maybe how many episodes have you done so far?
So you'll probably be like 103.
103.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
You missed the 101. Okay. Too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. When you get to 250, we'll make the 250 one about you.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
And I'll do
you.
it.
Oh, no.
Yep.
I think I could interview you again. I wouldn't mind that, right? 5 years later, you'd be doing something awesome. Yeah, that's the deal.
Probably. Good deal.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you want to
Great
say
to be
bye?
here. Bye, team.
You.
Thanks for
Bye.
watching.